Welcome to Downtown Sports. My name is Downtown Stephen Brown, and in today's video, guys, I want to go over the last couple of Maple Leaf games in depth, and then I would like to expand on a quote that Sheldon Keefe had from earlier in the week and talk about that, and then I'd like to look at all these blown leads and answer the question, is this just an extended slump, or is this something that we need to be worried about moving into the next couple of months and then eventually come playoff time? And I'd also like to look ahead in the schedule a little bit and talk about what we can expect to see from them in the coming weeks or over the next month or so. So first up, talking about the game last night against the New York Islanders, if you're just looking at the standings sorted by points, you would see that they are second last in the Metropolitan Division. But if you sort the standings by points percentage, because they've played a lot less games than the teams around them, they jump up into the standings a little bit. And they've been a lot better as of late after a very, very slow start to the season. Since December the 1st onwards, they're 14th in the NHL in terms of points percentage and 9-4-4 over the last 17 games played. If we're looking at the Maple Leafs lineup going into this game against the Islanders, there was no Jake Muzzin, and he didn't play against the Rangers either, as he suffered that concussion in their 6-5 win over the St. Louis Blues from last Saturday night, and I don't know what the timetable is on him, but even though Anze Kasha and Justin Hall were out of COVID protocol and they had rejoined the team on Long Island, they hadn't played, they hadn't practiced, they hadn't skated, so they didn't get into this game. But I would expect both of those guys to be back into the Maple Leafs lineup come next Wednesday when they play the Anaheim Ducks in their second home game this month. Carl Dahlstrom was called up and inserted into the lineup there, and I mean, that's really just a mercy sort of thing. Anything to give that third pair a different look, because there was no way after the game against the Rangers that you could roll Alex Biega and Travis Dermott back out there. And whether you want to blame that on Biega for not having played in a while and coming up from the American Hockey League, or on Travis Dermott because he was on the ice for 3 goals against in that game in a very limited amount of ice time, there's no way that you could have ran that same pairing out there. If you were looking at their lines from last night, you would have seen that Joey Anderson did slot in for them on that fourth line, and that goes back to something that we were talking about in our previous video, where basically for the entirety of 2022, the Maple Leafs' fourth line has been almost unplayable. But specifically the trio of Spezza, Clifford, Simmons, I understand that there's been a lot of injuries, there's been a lot of players in and out of the lineup, and it's caused a rotating cast on the fourth line. I understand it's hard to develop chemistry like that. I'm not blaming anyone. Individually as players, all three of those guys are good at different things, but together, probably too slow to be effective as a unit. And that's what we were seeing in the game against the Blues. It was what we were seeing against the Rangers, especially. There was no way that they could have ran that trio back out there. They needed to switch something up. And I mean, against the Islanders, I'm not going to say just because the advanced analytics were better that, problem solved, keep Joey Anderson there. Ideally, when everyone is healthy, you'd slot Pierre Engvall down there, and that is a little bit more speed to be able to take advantage of the things that Spezza and Simmons still do well offensively at their age. But I don't know. Going to be something to watch for as we move forward. But in taking a look at the advanced stats for this game, after 2 periods, the Maple Leafs led the shot attempts 28-18. They led the shots for 16-9, and they led the scoring opportunities 20-9. So they heavily outplayed the Islanders after 2 periods and were up by a score of 3-1. And if you're seeing the Islanders outplay the Maple Leafs in that third period there, a lot of that is just score effects, right? The Maple Leafs reverting to playing a little bit more defense with a 2-goal lead. And Peter Mrazek making some decent saves in that third period, especially in the final minutes when the Islanders had the goalie pulled. They shut it down after blowing 3-1 leads in 3 out of the last 4 games, or 4 out of the last 5 games. Something absolutely crazy. I can definitely understand why some people are not happy with the team over the last week or so. Even though the Islanders are 9-4-4 since the beginning of December and a middle-of-the-pack team overall since then, they're still one of the worst teams in the NHL in terms of scoring goals in all of the metrics, not just goals for per 60 in terms of the scoring chances, the expected goals, the shots, everything. So I don't know how much credit you want to give the Maple Leafs for not blowing a 3-1 lead to these guys. I don't know how much credit you want to give Peter Mrazek for playing well against one of the worst offensive teams in the league, but they won a game, and they played well, both the team and Mrazek, in a game that they should have. I think that there's a conversation to be had that meeting expectations, shouldn't just be... You should be somewhat happy when your expectations are met, right? It shouldn't just be a net neutral sort of thing. Last night's game, they were expected to win. They won. I was happy after the game. If you want to be net neutral, whatever, just say good. They should have. Fine. I mean, I'm also going to be cautiously optimistic at the same time, and I'm going to say that it was a step forward. I don't know how many steps forward it was, but it was a step forward for the team and Peter Mrazek. Especially after having blown multi-goal leads in 4 out of the team's last 5 games. And in those 4 games, mind you, they did win 2 of them, and they did pick up 5 out of a possible 8 points. So I don't think by the end of the year, we're looking at those 4 games and being like, damn, like really missed out on those 3 points against Colorado, Vegas, St. Louis, and the Rangers, who are all very good teams in their own right. I understand if the script just had gone differently, maybe people aren't as mad as what they are, because, you know, it was there and then it was just snatched away from you. Definitely a problem. But is it a problem that we're going to need to be worried about in the next couple of months and heading into the playoffs? Or is it just a slump? Do other teams experience blowing leads like this? Because from November the 1st until January the 1st, the Maple Leafs were 17-4-1 and had the highest points percentage in the entire NHL by a decent little margin. But is this slump and losing in this fashion just a Toronto-specific problem? Or is it something that other teams experience around the league as well? Because when things come in bunches, it's obviously hard to ignore. But when they're spread out a little bit, you don't notice them as much, right? Just looking at the end of the season, the last 4 games probably don't mean very much, because as Jeff Wyatt points out here, for what it's worth, Toronto has blown 6 multi-goal or third period leads this season and lost 2 of those games. Tampa has blown 9 and lost 4. Obviously, with the Lightning being who they are, they're going to have more of a leash, and rightfully so, right? Back-to-back Stanley Cup champions, they've endured a lot of injuries this year, and if those 9 multi-goal blown leads were spaced out throughout their 43 games this year, you're not going to notice them as much. But for the Leafs, they can never just lose, right? It's always in spectacular, like heartbreaking, like record-setting fashion. So, of course, 6 of the multi-goal blown leads that they've had in 38 games, 3 less than the Lightning. Of course, 4 of them came in the span of 5 games. So naturally, you are going to hyper-focus on it more. And out of those 4 games, you know, Mitch Marner doesn't play in 2 of them. Jake Muzzin, Justin Hall, an entire pair is out for you. And no matter what you want to say about their season so far, not having them in the lineup forces other guys to play higher up that they're not used to playing in that spot, right? They're not used to being relied upon in that role. And you see Travis Dermott play the worst game of his entire NHL career against the Rangers. You know, Liljegren and Sandin against the Blues weren't very good. You mix in Jack Campbell not being Superman, and, you know, no amount of Austin Matthews or William Nylander or Morgan Riley or any of the players who have played well over the last 6 games can save you. You know, you look at the Oilers and how much they've fallen and how much they've lost this year, having 2 of the best players in the entire league in Draisaitl and McDavid. You know, they can only do so much. And then you look at all the guys who have come out of COVID protocol the last 3 or 4 weeks or so, and that affects everyone differently, right? You can't ignore that. But you also look at the road trip that they were on, and every single game was played in a different time zone. They go from the Eastern time zone to Mountain to Pacific, back to Mountain to Central, and then they come home to Eastern Standard Time, and they practice in the snowstorm, and they were bag skated, like we showed from Sean McKenzie's TikTok in our previous video, and then they play the Rangers, and they get their asses kicked. You know, if Sheldon Keefe says that they're tired and they looked exhausted here, how do you think that they're going to feel there when more guys are injured, the 4th line's playing 5 minutes a night, and they're placing that burden up on the first 3 lines, and they're in a different time zone for every single game? It's easy to hear that as me making an excuse for them, but when do you cross the line from it being an excuse to just it being what it is, right? But then after that Rangers game, you have this quote from Sheldon Keefe: "We got exposed today for being a team that was just soft and purposeless, and just kind of playing the game, hoping it was going to work out." You can choose to view this quote in a couple of different lights. The first being that the circumstances really aren't affecting them that much. You know, basically the entire team coming back from COVID the last 3 to 4 weeks, not affecting them as much as we're maybe playing it up to be. the road trip, the time zone changes, not that big of a deal. Maybe they just are soft and purposeless. And if that's the case, I can understand why you're upset. But I don't think you can take this for face value. Because it's not me or anyone else coming out post game and saying that the guys are tired and gassed. It's not me or anyone else coming out in the pregame interview and saying that, look, it's tough to play on the road and have every game be in a different time zone. That's Sheldon Keefe that's saying those things. And obviously, he's not just going to come out pregame and say the guys don't have it tonight, don't expect much. Obviously, he's not going to come out after the game and say we just didn't have it tonight. Going to have to look to the next one. Obviously, he's not going to make excuses for the team. He's going to try to motivate them. And that's the way that I view this. I view this as Sheldon Keefe saying, I understand the circumstances, but we have games to play. They're not being postponed. We're playing them. We're here. We showed up. We got on the plane, right? Let's play hard. Let's dig deep. Let's find that second wind. Because when I first read this, I didn't feel good about it. When you first read this, you didn't feel good about it. Imagine how the guys in the locker room feel. If they read it firsthand or they heard it from the guys sitting next to them or from a family member. They're not going to feel good about this. It's embarrassing. They're going to try to come out next game and hopefully try harder. And after Keefe said it, they won the Islanders game. Even though it was a game that, you would have expected them to have won, they still did it. They didn't blow the 3-1 lead. So far, so good. I'm not saying that any of those excuses are acceptable, and neither is Sheldon Keefe with this quote. But at the same time, where is that line between excuse and it is what it is? Things can be unfortunate and disappointing at the same time. So we're not just going to let these recent stretch of games just go by in the wind. We're going to remember them for the upcoming couple of weeks. But we're also going to remember that the team was 17-4-1 and the best team in the NHL from November the 1st until January the 1st. They play 3 games over their next 9 days, 2 of them being at home and 1 of them being on the road against the Red Wings in Detroit. So there's not a lot of travel over the next week or so. So let's see how they do then, because moving into February, things are going to get a bit busier with the postponed games being made up. Peter Mrazek is still in the first year of a 3-year contract that's seeing him count as $3.8 million against the Maple Leafs cap. To say that he's been extremely disappointing is not a hot take so far. He's been injured several times for lengthy periods, and the games that he has played, he hasn't been very good. He was good against the Islanders, but like we said, one of the worst offensive teams in the league. It's a step in the right direction, but not very many steps. So there's 44 games left in this season and 7 back-to-backs. Peter Mrazek cannot play just 7, 8, 9, or 10 games the rest of the way. Jack Campbell, he's had a couple of games where he hasn't looked like himself, and people are starting to wonder if that's all the games that he's played catching up to him. And I don't think that that's fair to make any conclusions based on just a couple of games, but, it was supposed to be a tandem. And if Peter Mrazek can play between 15 or 20 of the remaining 44 and be good, I think we can wipe our hands clean with the first half of this season, because they need him. They need him down the stretch here. And if he comes up big, like I said, we can maybe wipe the slate clean. But if he doesn't and continues to be a disappointment, that's something that the Maple Leafs are seriously going to have to look at this offseason. But that's going to be it for the video, guys. So make sure to like it if you did like it and subscribe more, because more is always on the way. And I guess as we're moving into trade rumor and speculation season here, because we're coming closer to the trade deadline, it's not until March the 21st, I guess we can expect to see a lot more videos on the channel just asking questions. Should the Maple Leafs acquire this guy? Should they acquire that guy? Should they be interested in him or him? Should they not be interested in these sort of players? Let me know. Let me know what your thoughts are down below in the comment section. I'll see you in the next one, guys. Take care.